And we are up and we are running. Everybody, hello and welcome to the Zactivist. And we are here today talking with the ranking member of Congress, Representative Rick Larsen of Washington State. Representative Larsen, how are you doing, my friend?
Very good. I'm glad to be here. I would say it's been a busy week in DC, but for those tracking, we came in Monday night. We took 1 or 2 votes on Tuesday, and they canceled votes for the week.
And
So
council, that's a little bit kind of unheard of, or is it not? And
I've been here 24 years plus whatever, a couple of months, and this has never happened before. And what happened this week is that Republicans wanted to use this tricky procedural process that we have here to prevent a change in the rules of the House of Representatives that would have otherwise allowed new parents to be able to proxy vote. That is, if it's a female member of Congress had a baby, then she could stay home, basically take a leave of absence, but then have someone proxy vote for her for a set period of time. And the Republicans didn't want to allow that, but we have to do this because of these arcane rules we have. We have to bring this rule up and vote on it, up or down. And Republicans don't want to do that because they don't want to allow proxy voting for new parents, which is kind of crazy. It's kind of 1950s as opposed to 2025s. But that's why we quit early and people went home.
What was their rationale for?
The rationale the Republican leadership has right now is, I think, and I'm not trying to rationalize for them. It's not my job to explain them. They can do it themselves. But I only think that they have a strong position against proxy voting. Something we did during COVID when it was just dangerous for us to be around each other because of COVID. So we created this proxy process that allowed people to, if they were sick, to give others specific permission to vote on specific bills on the floor or amendments on the floor. And they never liked that. The Republicans sued to stop that. Meanwhile, Republicans who were party to that suit were also using proxy voting at the time. So there's a level of hypocrisy here that's pretty high. But they are taking that principle now and saying, no, I mean, if you're a member of Congress and you want to have a baby, we're not against that. Just don't expect to be able to allow someone to vote for you while you're on maternity leave, or it could be even on paternity leave if you're the father of a newborn. So it's a principle, I think, and that principle is getting in the way of something very, very practical. And that practical thing is just to provide a set period of time to allow a proxy vote for that parent who is now a new parent to take some time off while they're with their child at home.
Representative Larsen, it's an honor for me to be here and have the opportunity to talk to you. I've been a political junkie for a long time, all the way back in college when you were elected to serve. And, I think that you're turn of the century. You're a millennial winner, like 2000 and started in 2001.
Right.
And, you've seen a lot. You've experienced a lot. You're one of the most experienced members of our United States House of Representatives. And you're also in a seat that has been oftentimes close and contested. A question that I have is that, what has been, first off, your secret to maintaining success with moderate centrist voters, as well as our more progressive voices in the party?
Yeah, it's been 24 years. I got elected in 2000 and then took office first on January 3rd, 2001. And so it's been a roller coaster ride that entire time. There's been ups and downs and so on, ups and downs in my district where I got in my first race 50.000009%. Second race, I got 50.02 or something. So, a landslide, relatively speaking. 2010 was a rough year. I was behind on election night. 6 days later, I was ahead by 6,500 votes and won. But I think the way, and this is a great lesson for frontliners for next year, when you're looking at a race where the president is not on the ticket. So what can we do for our frontline, marginal members and marginal districts be able to take advantage of it? It's really a focus on your district first and foremost. I was telling my staff all the time, like, if we give a good tour to people who've come across the country, remember Washington State, so they fly 3,000 miles to take a tour, or so long as we get a letter back to that person, that may be the only contact they ever have with my office. And that's all we're ever going to hear from them. And that's all they're going to talk about. What a great time they had in DC. So that local service is it's really forgotten part of winning. And because we focus on a lot of the bigger issues, but if you're a person in a swing district, called swing districts, you need to be focused on your district first and foremost. And then if you do that, people will forgive the worst vote that you've taken. That might be the worst vote for your district, but you felt strongly you needed to take this vote. I've always had a strong pro-choice record. That's not been a problem. I also have a strong pro-jobs record, and that's why I'm right now the ranking member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And Democrats have always been about jobs. Not saying that the Democrats aren't about jobs, but right now I feel like I'm the public works director for Democrats, because they're coming to me a lot saying, how can I get this money into my district to help build this road, or to make this bridge safer, or to get replace the transit buses, so that,
because you've done it, you know how to make that happen. You know how to work across the aisles around DC to make it happen.
And that sticks in the sticks in the crowd. Some of my constituents say, "Well, I want to see you on TV more." And it's like, I don't know if there's space for me on TV among the Democratic Party. They got great folks who are great spokespeople, like Jamie Raskin from Maryland, and Jerry Conley from Virginia, and Jonah Goose from Colorado, who are leading our rapid response task force against the administration. You got folks who get around the country and get crowds, like Jasmine Crockett and AOC, who get crowds and help out in that regard. And my role is sort of like, I got my role to play, and so my role is like, how can I help you in your district be successful there? The joke I have about the Transportation Committee relative to other committees is that if you want to be on TV in the District of Columbia, there are committees for that. If you want to be on TV in your district, the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee is a committee for that. We will help you go home and talk and cut that ribbon at that new transit station.
24 years in Congress proves that to be the case, and that really makes a difference.
I'd like to think that makes a difference. Yeah.
I think it makes a huge difference. You make a good point. I agree with that 100%. But I also believe that we're finding a moment, and that's really why I invited you for this conversation, because we're hearing from a lot of new voices, and we're hearing from a lot of people who are, like you said, like these really great speakers. But they're people who are like yourself, who are very deep in the work, the day to day. And to me, when you're doing what you're doing with transportation infrastructure, I mean, you are a leading voice in the infrastructure bill, getting this passed, getting this through, helping shape that, helping form that. And now you're seeing the next iteration of that and kind of seeing where it's going. Mm-hmm. I think that what you do is something that the American people, need to know. I think that you've carved out a legacy that is going to, I think you've been instrumental in helping transform the next century of our country through the infrastructure bill, if those good things are allowed to happen. And I think people, of course, need to know about it. I'm concerned about that work. I'm concerned about it being able to continue. Yeah. What do you say to that?
Yeah, that is a legit concern, because when we passed the bipartisan infrastructure law in 2021, President Biden signed it. It's a 5-year bill, so it comes up again. And the process of government, the process of legislation, is that we try to reauthorize or redo things, learn from our mistakes, build on the successes, and do it again. And so we have to do that by September 30th of 2026. So we're in that process right now, having hearings. And when we did this bill in 2021, we were really thinking long in the future. We have an infrastructure system that was basically built in the 1950s in the United States, and we need one that's built for the 2050s. That is, how are we going to get around in the future? What do we learn about how we get around, and how do we change transportation? One of the things we've learned about how we get around is that transportation emits a lot of carbon, and moving things around even safely uses a lot of carbon, a lot of fuel. And not that we're going to turn the spigot off tomorrow, but we do know that we can have transit buses and school buses that are electric school buses, electric transit. And so kids aren't going to school in diesel emission spitting buses, or people aren't using transit for the same. We know that there's new technology that can help us make bridges safer, and that the materials that we use can be less carbon intensive. So how do we push on those investments? We know that rail in this country, that there's expansion of passenger rail happening that's both publicly driven and privately driven. So how can we get the public and private sectors to work together to expand passenger rail to help people get around the country safely? We know all that's happening. You talk to companies and they say, please catch up to where we are, government. And that's what I want to see us do more of as we look at the bill, the next version of this. And honestly, the new administration has no interest at all in the green stuff. Shorthand, I call it the green stuff. They'd rather build more lanes than think about how can we move more people safely. Their solution is always build more lanes. They don't want to invest in passenger rail. So we're going to have to hold them accountable for Amtrak, as well as some of these regional state-run rail lines that move passengers around. They're not big fans of transit. But I know in my state, in Washington State, where we're building the Sound Transit, it's called Light Link, I know that there are a lot of women and men who are union members who are working in construction to build that out. You build transit, you build rail, you're going to put women and men to work too. And so we've got some things to really push hard on over the next couple of years to convince my colleagues on the Republican side that there'll be plenty of work in everyone's district if we think about how we build for the future infrastructure of this country.
That was the best part of I mean, of course, we want upgrades, we want, a healthier planet, but it was the jobs, it was the impact on the economy and the future of our economy that to me made the infrastructure bill, such a huge win for the American people. So I appreciate the fact that you're not taking your eyes off of that prize and continuing to push forward. For those of you who are watching, and I see that we are now live on all platforms, including Twitter. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat and we will share those questions. We'll ask those questions. This is this is something I've been mulling over for you and thinking about, like one of our true, centrist leaders, someone who's really been a trailblazer and a survivor in our Congress. We've seen a lot of really great rhetoric, amazing sound bites, great things out there. And we are constantly seeing the needle move in regards to Democrats being the opposition party at the moment. But we're not seeing the needle move as much for Republicans. I, look at the polls and I really don't care what Democrats say. I'm looking to see that Republicans are changing their minds, and I'm not seeing it happen. I'm seeing literal people who are anti-vax lose children and say that they still will remain anti-vax although they lost a child. I'm seeing people who've had spouses who have been, unlawfully taken away from them in the country who still say that they support President Trump's efforts towards deportation and mass deportations. What do you think it will take for Republicans who are staunch supporters of Trump to realize that maybe some of these policies are not benefiting them?
Yeah, I think the way I've always tried to characterize voters, at least in my district, I mean, there are Democratic voters. They are voters who are Democrats and they vote. There are Republican voters. These people are voters who are Republican, they vote Republican. Then there are people who will vote Democratic or will vote Republican. They'll switch back and forth depending on the election. So those are the people that really target. I don't know that I don't think that going after a voter who has consistently been a Republican voter, whether it's been with George Bush or Donald Trump, that they're going to change. There are people who have voted for George Bush and for Donald Trump who will change. And we need to, to create a majority coalition, we need to be thinking about those folks because they're voters too, and they're willing to vote Democratic. We also need to continue to build our base and reach out to folks and not get away from our own values. Like I'm not going to become 95% pro-choice to get a Republican vote. I'm 100% pro-choice. Right? I'm not going to become 90% pro-civil rights to get a Republican vote. I'm going to be 100% civil rights, and they can come along with me. That's who I'm going to be. That's who I am. But Democrats still have to respond to the challenges that the great middle, and the middle is much greater than Democrats or Republicans. And right now, that's about prices. It's about the economy. This president said on day one, he would lower gas prices. I know where I live, they're up about 12, 13, 14%. Now, is that his fault? I'm not going to say it's his fault. I'm going to say he promised, and he broke that promise. He promised egg prices would be lower. They're not where I'm from. Is that his fault? Probably not. But I know he promised he would do something about it, and he's not doing anything about it. He's doing, regardless of what his promises are, he's doing nothing, zero, to fulfill them when it comes to lowering prices and making the economy better for Americans. And I don't care why he's not doing it. He made a promise and he's breaking it. And that's what I'm trying to communicate to folks who are sort of in that middle, who might vote Democratic next time in 2026, because they've been sold a bill of goods by this guy. And the reason they voted for him, at least in my district, the numbers show, is because it was an economic hangover, an inflation hangover. They weren't happy about the economy. They were okay with pro-choice. They're okay with pro-environment. They're okay with pro a lot of things, but they didn't feel very comfortable in the economy. And this president's doing nothing at all to address that. In fact, as we speak, we are expecting very soon this president will introduce massive tariffs.
Liberation Day.
On Liberation Day, yeah. Someone joked to me today. They said, "Well, if you remove a few words, we can just make it Libation Day because we may need a libation after this day is over." Because there may be people listening, watching who like tariffs. Tariffs as a targeted economic tool are important. Tariffs as blanket tariffs is going to raise prices, at least for the people I represent. It's going to raise prices on everything, on a car, on the price of gas, on the price to heat a home with electricity, because we have cross-border energy transfer with British Columbia, where I'm from.
Right. Yes, Representative Larsen, thank you for taking us to tariffs. That was something that I also wanted to probe. There's no way I'm going to let someone from a border state not give me a better explanation of the actual in-person harm that's going to come from this. So again, you're saying that for your constituents, people who are living in the state of Washington and our border states, just, from that micro level, you're looking at an increase on heating costs and energy costs.
Yeah.
You're looking at an increase on, you said, what else?
We'll see food costs go up. We don't get a lot of our food imports from Canada, but we do from Mexico. And so you're going to see basic food costs go up as a result of these tariffs. Of course, auto parts and autos, price of cars will go up. They don't come across, that's all Detroit and so on. It's also imports from Asia, mainly Japan, Korea. But with steel and aluminum tariffs at 25%, that's going to be incorporated in the cost. So when the president, like in 2000, last time he was president, said, well, Mexico's going to pay for this or China's going to pay for it. No, that's not how tariffs work. Those prices get shoved into the cost of things that you buy. I just had the Port of Everett leadership here. Everett's in my hometown. We have a port there. In the last tariff war in the late 2010s, they lost 14% of their cargo volume. Now, what does that mean? It may not mean much to people, but that cargo doesn't move off of a ship unless there's a union man or woman in the longshore union who's getting paid to move that cargo off the ship. And then they take that money and go to the store. They take their kids to the movies. They go buy a car. They go do whatever they do. But if there's 14% less cargo coming in, that means that's 14% less work for a man or a woman who's doing that job. And you're going to see that exact same thing happen.
People have less things coming in, and then you're going to have less people. You have less people having to work or having opportunities to work, and so it's going to have a continuous. That'll be the trickle down. That's going to be
this is trickle down economics under the Trump Republicans. It trickles down to nothing for the people I represent. They'll get nothing.
And I think and that's something I think that's going to be a really the part of the message to really to get out there so that the American people can brace themselves for it whenever I've been waiting for the announcement to come. I think people were up as early as 4 a.m. waiting for more information on Liberation Day. Here we are at 4 p.m. On the East Coast, still waiting for information on this great press conference on Liberation Day.
Probably the greatest press conference.
Of all time, in the history of the world. Representative Larsen, I appreciate your time and that you could join us. And again, we have 118 people watching us on Twitter. So again, if you guys have questions, I want you to drop them in the chat, and we want to make sure that we're answering or using this time to ask any questions that you have. One thing that I also want to know, we talked about the tariffs. There are a lot of people who are asking, what more can be done? And so I always want to know, as someone who is a regular American citizen, what more can we do to support our leaders, our Democratic leaders in Congress? What more can we do on our part to be of greater support to you and your colleagues?
Well, if you have an outlet, if you need an outlet for something, I know this Saturday in my hometown of Everett at 1 p.m., I'm speaking at a hands-off rally. And I understand that there's going to be these hands-off rallies around the country. So, look for some sort of notice in whatever medium you use to get your news, get your information, to see if there's something locally happening. And this hands-off rally, what is a hands-off? It's Elon Musk, hands off of Social Security. Donald Trump, hands off of Medicare and Medicaid. Republican Congress, hands off the bodies of women who deserve autonomy for their bodies. Republican Congress, hands off, please, hands off the economy right now, because all you're doing is raising prices for people. So this is a hands-off rally. So it's a chance for people to get out there, be with other people like them, who believe the same things, and to generate some energy about what can be done next. The second thing I say is, it's one thing to lead. It's better to lead if we know there are followers, right? So most likely your listeners are supporting Democrats, let's say. And so you don't need to beg them to do the thing that you want them to do. They're probably doing it. But thanking them, you don't have to thank me, but my colleagues deserve a lot of thanks for the work that they're doing. My Democratic colleagues deserve thanks. Just let them know you're there, supporting them. And I guess third is share your story. We have a rapid response task force that Joe Neguse and Rosa DeLauro, Jamie Raskin, and Jerry Conley are all running. And on that litigation and response website, it's called litigationandresponse.house.gov. There's a share your story tab. And if you're a federal employee, or someone who's a federal employee has been fired, if your local Social Security office has been closed, if your friend who's on Medicaid, they might lose health care, have them share that story, because it helps build up the case for us to push back and fight back against the worst of what the Trump administration is doing. So that website, again, it's litigationandresponse.house.gov. That's a mouthful. I wish it was named, Doge Be Gone or Doge Away Get along, little doji. I didn't win that
Get
fight.
along, little doji is what I will now call it. I will refer to that now as get along, little doji. I think that's really great. You bring a great point. I know here in Atlanta, we lost 10,000 people in my city, lost jobs to CDC. 10,000 people. People are panicked, people are worried, people are concerned. Whole departments that deal with critical things like HIV research completely wiped out in one fell swoop. You brought up something really good that I'm so glad you triggered this, because I definitely want to also ask you about that. This is my MAGA Tears mug. If you're watching and want to know where you get this, came from Isaiah Martin from the Texas 18th. He's a candidate. He's also a content creator. I donated to him, and he has these. You get these with the donation, or you can order it on your own. I love the mug. There are a lot of MAGA Tears in America right now.
That's right. I was just going to have a glass of mega
From the
tears.
results of from last night. Now, definitely don't want to throw it. You don't say a thing, Congressman, don't even make a face. But I will. I'll say this again. Matt Gaetz, with all the allegations against him, was able to strongly win his district. And it still went red last night, but barely. But barely. A lot of progress was made. And to me, that's a major indictment against the Trump administration, the current sentiment towards Republicans. You also saw a major victory in Wisconsin with Judge Susan Crawford winning the seat and maintaining liberal control of that Supreme Court. Or really, I wouldn't even say liberal control, just simply maintaining a fair and balanced court that's going to do the work of protecting the rights of the citizens of Wisconsin on yesterday, when you had Brad Schimmel being heavily supported by Elon Musk and lots of money spent, $25 million spent for an election. I think that proves that you can't buy an election when you are a millionaire, that Americans and their votes are not for sale. Congressman, do you believe, because this is what we are hearing, is that there are Republican members of Congress, people who I know who are your friends, people who I know you probably love these people because you've worked with them for a long time. You know their parents, you know their children, you know their spouses. You've been there probably for, Republican colleagues and their kids being born. Mm-hmm. Because that's just that's America. That's how it works for us and our coworkers. We may not agree with some of the things our coworkers may believe, but they're still our coworkers. They become our friends. Sometimes they become, like family. And I think that we expect that from our congressional members. We've heard that the threat of Elon Musk and his money, the threat of Republican super PACs, keeps Republican members of Congress from voting for their people, and instead continuously voting for the profits of billionaires. Do you believe that last night's results will change the trajectory of some of your colleagues in the Republican Party?
No, I think it actually probably cements that trend of being afraid to get crosswise with the president and his billionaire friends. I don't think that's going to loosen them up at all. I do think, in the back of my mind, in the little conspiracy part of my brain, I do think that one of the reasons we canceled votes today and for the rest of the week is because there was some thought that last night was not going to go well for the Republicans, and they didn't want to be here in D.C. to answer to the D.C. press about why it went so badly for them. It's kind of funny. If someone wins by 15%, Republican wins by 15%, and that's actually a psychological loss, because that district
plus 30, plus 32,
was 30. Yeah, it was 30%. And the other one, where Matt Gaetz' district, there's one county that went blue for the first time since
Escambia.
Escambia, since the beginning of counties, when counties were created, I guess. It's just crazy. And so, and then you saw Wisconsin, where exactly, where the Supreme Court justice wins by 10. I think they also have this what they call the superintendent of public instruction, or their state education secretary, wins big as well. Yes. And then you have these other races around the state Senate races in Iowa last week and Pennsylvania that are flipping to blue from red. There is definitely a response and a backlash against the egregious steps that not just Trump is taking, but handing over the keys to an unelected billionaire in Elon Musk, who, by the way, we're all still waiting for the thank you letter from Elon Musk for the millions of dollars of taxpayer money he used to build his companies. But he simply has forgotten that he built the success of his companies on the backs of the taxpayers. And we're more than happy to do that because there's innovation going on in space now. There's innovation going on in electric vehicles. That's all positive. But for him to pretend that this just dropped out of the sky into his pockets kind of shows not just his mentality, but kind of the mentality of the billionaire class in this country. They're just not willing to accept the fact that, they literally wouldn't be going anywhere unless there was a road to drive on or a train to take without government support for that work.
Mm. Congressman, thank you so much. I think that was great. I always end with some kind of fun, lighthearted questions, some things that people probably don't know, but things that people probably would like to know, right? So one is, what is your favorite snack right now?
Man, I would go with a basic bag of Lay's potato chips.
What flavor?
Salty.
Plain Lay's salted.
Plain Lay's salted. Yeah. It just sometimes I just have to have a bag of Lay's.
What are you binging? A TV show that you think is binge worthy?
Well, I'm old school. I am the original executive producer of the X-Files. Lives in my district. He was with the show the first 5 seasons. So I am nearly done with season 9 of X-Files, and then I'll move into the rebooted 10 and 11 after I'm done there. And it's been great. It's just been great to kind of go a little bit. It's like mid school. It's not really old school. It's a bit mid school, but it's been great to watch those shows again. That said, I'm also working through Justified, the original Justified as well. And as far as new shows go, my wife and I are watching Chaos on it's on Netflix. I'm not, of course, I'm not endorsing any one platform or any one show. I'm just really saying.
No, that's what you're watching. Yeah. So, what is a Washington cuisine treat, something unique there that someone needs to check out? Because, like if I'm here, I'm in Atlanta and I want to support a Washington-based business, whether it's a national, whether it's only local, I can go online, I can order this thing. What is it I need to get?
Yeah, I think you can order. They're perishable, and it's a particular thing. But in the Gulf, you got it, and as well. But oysters from the Puget Sound, and you can get those. You get them cold and fresh, so you got to get them overnight. I like raw oysters. It's not everyone's gig, but you can literally taste the Puget Sound in a Puget Sound oyster. The salt water, it just makes the oyster that much better. If you don't like that, you can barbecue it. So you open it, shuck it, you barbecue it, and then just some hot sauce or some butter. You don't need to do a lot to it. You don't need to dress it up a lot.
No, I love it. I had oysters on Friday night. I love oysters. We have a great oyster bar here in Atlanta called the Optimist. So,
okay.
So I love oysters. So,
yeah. So that's it's very Northwest.
Well, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you so much. Are there any questions that you have for me?
No, not at all. It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for a chance to talk to you and talk to your viewers and listeners.
My friend, we are here for you. Please continue to stay in touch. We're going to continue to watch and continue to support. If there's anything you or Washington needs, we're here.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks, my friend.